Counting down in five, four, three, two, and one. Valeria Bullo, welcome to Cam Talks.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being on this show. It's a pleasure to speak to you, Valeria. And just to give my audience a bit of an insight, we actually met many years ago now, working at the TV film charity. And I was, I'm always very in awe of people who have spent their life in the TV film industry as I'm just trying to start my career. And you were very, very kind, and you gave me so much wonderful advice about actually being a filmmaker. And so first of all, I want to thank you very much for giving me your time.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's very nice of you.
It's not often that that people particularly in this industry are able to stop and sort of sort of give some mentorship. But why don't you just give us a quick summary about who you are and sort of where your career began?
Sure. And I think I can probably link it very nicely and seamlessly with the very generous example that you used to thank me. As in, I think for me, it's very, very important to be able to connect with people in the film industry, whether you're starting out as a filmmaker, whether you're an established filmmaker, because throughout my career, I've always had one or two individuals, amongst many others that maybe didn't have any time, but it was always so meaningful when people gave me some of their time or some of their advice, because it can be a very lonely industry. As a freelancer, you are your own agent, you are your own accountant, you are your own business, and it can be really isolating. So I think it's really important to be able to connect with each other and offer that on. And at some point, I'm sure, knowing you, you'll do that with someone else too. And that's just a positive thing that I think needs to grow and keep going. So I studied something completely different. I used to work as an interpreter, so I did languages and worked as an interpreter. And then at some point in my life, I decided I wanted to work in film. So I moved to London in 2006. I didn't know anyone. I was a bit older coming into the industry. I just contacted people. I don't know if you've ever heard, you're probably too young to know what the knowledge is. There's only an online version now, but when I moved to London, it was a big giant book with just people's phone numbers in it. So line producers, and it was really expensive. It was like £300-400. Only production companies had it. It was called The Knowledge because it had everything in it. It was like the industry thing to have. I think you probably couldn't even buy it unless you were a production company. And so a friend who worked in a production company allowed me to photocopy a few pages with a few key contacts. And over the years, I cold called people and, tried to meet them for coffees, and rather unsuccessfully. Meanwhile, I was sort of cutting my teeth in documentaries and corporate film and commercials, which was quite lucrative and also quick turnaround. There was more opportunity for career growth because obviously the division of labor is very different. You can do a doc with just 3 people. But I just sort of persevered, and it was films that I really wanted to work on. So then I had, because actually it was documentaries that got me into filmmaking. I saw a film, it's called Dark Days, by a guy called Mark Singer. DJ Shadow did the soundtrack for it. It's a remarkable, remarkable film, all shot in black and white, in the abandoned Amtrak lines underneath Penn Station with a homeless community. He'd never touched a movie camera before, made this amazing documentary, got people, the people that he was working with, to become his crew. I mean, it was just exceptional. He won every award and never made another film again. So it was like really quite a unique story. So yeah, so I had been to Central America to do a documentary, and when I came back to London, some of those contacts that I was trying to pursue, at this stage, 2 or 3 years had gone by. Eventually, a call came. I was also working in hospitality. I worked as a bartender for a long time so that I would be free in the day to get the call. And yeah, I kind of got a call, but this coordinator said, look, you definitely won't be interested because you've just produced a documentary. So this is a junior position, it's a production assistant. But it was a real pivotal experience because it ended up being Christopher Nolan's Inception, and I was a total Chris Nolan geek. Memento is one of my all-time favorite films, and there was something there about ego as well, taking quite a junior position, but it was great. I mean, it changed everything because I was the best possible production assistant because I was very experienced, and I got to go to Morocco and Paris and kind of see firsthand, real kind of classical filmmaking at its best. And that really, my sort of seal didn't break for a long time. I know that nowadays we talk a lot about um, all the various issues with the film industry, but at the time, which not that I'm trying to age myself, but it was very much a feast or a famine. You would get one job, you would be on the one job for however many months, and there would be maybe, 6, 7, 8 months in between. So you sort of had to find ways to, make a living or survive in between. And so then I did that for a long time. I worked in independent films, big budget studios. I was a production exec for 6 years. But I guess sort of another pivotal moment for me was I had lost someone very close to me. She was my best friend. She'd died very suddenly. And the production that I was on had a real kind of cold approach to it. And I got a special dispensation to fly out for a morning to go to her funeral, and then was expected to be back in the office that afternoon. And then after that, I thought I just wanted to get out of London. And so I accepted a job on the other side of the world and went to Namibia. And I worked on Mad Max, which was a bit of a hot, tough experience because what I was going through, I can now in hindsight recognize it. Um, but yeah, it was another kind of pivotal moment because it kind of made me really rethink my entire career, what I had been doing, the level of sacrifice and investment that I put, you'd always put everything on hold for a film, but when something big like that happens, it kind of makes you question everything. And then, yeah, I came back to the UK and I started teaching in a film school because I thought I needed to learn how to do something else. And then, yeah, I then went on to be a production exec for 5.5 years. And then it was after that experience that kind of mental health and inclusion and just well-being and treating people better became a real focus for me. So I worked for the film and TV charity, which is where we met, for 2 years, leading on the creation of the Whole Picture Toolkit, which is a co-designed tool made with the industry for the industry on essentially how to treat people better. And then that's led me to my current role, which is essentially I work kind of like a consultant in helping productions put together a well-being strategy or widen their talent pools or think about working with sensitive content, just a kind of whole variety of things.
Valeria, thank you. Thank you for giving me that wicked summary. There's so much to unpack here, but to be honest with you, I'm in awe of your ability to have gone through this ringer and then to have found something that you find to be really important, at the end of it. It's like having gone through a very similar experience in terms of being I was only a runner, but I was a runner in the advertising industry, where you're working incredibly hard, and you're sort of at the mercy of the producers and the mercy of all the crew. When you're that low in the pecking order, you're doing all of the sort of the hardest run around jobs without any sort of break or anyone. No one's looking after you. You're looking after everybody else. So I can really see how, obviously when we met at the TV film charity, it was about creating a solution for production companies to sort of try and omit some of those stresses that people have when working on a film set. But you mentioned feast or famine, and it's very, very interesting because obviously I don't think anybody gets involved in the TV film industry for money. It's very silly to assume that, anyone working in TV film is just there for the money, because anyone that knows the industry knows that it is big periods of intense work, and then big periods of no work at all. And so obviously we've gone through a pandemic, and we've seen how the TV film industry was just completely ignored by the UK government. There was no furlough in place. I mean, I believe that's how the TV film charity itself stepped in and created a resource for the industry. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess when I was kind of referring to the feast and the famine, just to clarify, is in post-pandemic, we had a huge surge of work. And, for the past 2 or 3 years, we've had a real sort of problem with not having enough people in the industry to do the jobs. But absolutely, I do recognize the reality of the freelancer is that often, work just is not there.
Mm.
So absolutely, within that period of the pandemic, I was one, like probably you and so many other people. I lost all of my work during the pandemic. So I had just had a baby the year before, which is actually when I created my CineMamas group, because I was really needing a community to be part of. We are part of the film and TV community, but do you have people that you can be completely honest with and talk about, how hard it is, or at least at that time, how you're putting food on the table, or, there were things like, childcare providers were still expecting to be paid even though they were closed, and that was certainly in the early days. So those were some of the challenges that, for example, I was facing. I also didn't know, how did regular folks like me work in the film industry and have a kid, where, in my particular circumstances is I have no family support network, and, I'm reliant on childcare that's open from 9 until 6. So how do you get to work at 6 a.m. and, pick your kids up after 8 if you're not super rich and have a live-in nanny, or, some other solution or family that you can rely on. So that was definitely something that I threw myself into. But the reason, and I'm getting to the film and TV charity, is my experience of the film and TV charity was very much from that of a beneficiary, and then of being part of the charity to improve work, which is a real kind of circular experience. So I used to say when I was there, I lived and breathed it, because when I literally had nothing coming in and my partner's work was suddenly completely unstable, and like me, many others who were freelancers. So maybe there's 2 people who are freelancers, or one person, and you don't know how you're going to pay your mortgage, you don't know how you're going to pay your rent. The film and TV charity stepped in. It describes itself as a backbone organization. It's there for freelancers because really we don't have anyone representing us, helping us somewhere to go. So their first kind of most, I guess, impactful piece was creating the support line. I've had a very impactful bullying experience in my career, and it was prior to the support line existing. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't know who to talk to. So creating that support line, which is 24/7, 365 days a year. It's completely free, and you can access up to 6 sessions of therapy. Was kind of groundbreaking. There is no other service like that. Yes, people that work for companies can get an EAP, an employee assistance program, but again, for a freelancer, you don't really have anywhere to go. So that was kind of their first big piece. And that was created as a sort of catalyst after two people, a production designer and a location manager in the industry, kind of very well known, had taken their own life and had spoken about a sense of loneliness. And the family, I believe, of the location manager had sort of approached the film and TV charity to kind of create something, some level of support. And then the sort of second big thing was pre-pandemic, the Film and TV Charity commissioned the Looking Glass report, which is a groundbreaking piece of research. So again, pre-pandemic, before we were all talking about mental health in a lot more of an open way. And that threw up some really shocking statistics about just the state of the film and TV industries, which, is a multi-million-pound business that brings, thousands and thousands of pounds to this country. We're in a pretty bad way. 85% of people working in film and TV had suffered with their mental health, compared to 65 in the national average. 1 in 5 had considered taking their own life. Really, really kind of sobering things. And so in response to that, they launched the Whole Picture program, which happened a little bit later. But in between the launch of the Whole Picture program and the Looking Glass, they stepped in and provided smallish grants, but emergency grants for people who were, not able to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, their bills, which is exactly what they've done this year again with the period of strikes. So the actors' strike and the writers' strike. So again, hundreds of people, thousands of people out of work and mental health dipping. Again, they've stepped in and provided that support, obviously with kind of very large donations being made to support that. It's not a bottomless fund. So they really do rely on partners, stakeholders, and donations, and even individuals to make donations.
Mm. It's really interesting because the TV Film Charity it's a very new charity. I mean, I understand it's been around for a while, but I think its ability to
Oh, yeah,
grow.
100 years it's celebrated.
Well, then that's more than a while then, Valeria. That's probably one of the oldest charities I've ever heard of. But I think the
Yeah.
recent donations and the recent creation of these services has created what in my mind is kind of like a very fresh charity that's like solving real world problems. And to be frank, I've used the hotline 3 times over the last 2 years. Obviously, making this film Sunrise has been not just a passion project, a labor of love, but it's been an incredible financial burden on me. If I needed to bridge some of the funding issues, I just spent money on a credit card, and it would be on the basis that, oh, I'll fix it later on, and then of course you're lying there sleeping in the set, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is awful. And actually, the reason why I phoned the TV film charity was because I'd already phoned the Samaritans, and Samaritans didn't pick up the phone. So that was a
Wow.
a bit of a shock for me, because I thought, okay,
Of
someone's going to
course.
pick up the phone in a second, and it just kept ringing and kept ringing and kept ringing. And I realized Samaritans are probably super busy. Lots of people are trying to get in touch with them. And then I called up the TV film charity, and within 3 rings, someone's on the phone to me. And they'd spent their career in the TV film industry, so they understood what I was going through. And so they asked me all about the production. And this was at 3 a.m. in the morning. At 3 a.m. in the morning, I'm now having a great
Mm.
conversation with someone. I put that they tell me, things are going to be okay. It's going to be a great film. It's all going to be worth it. Things that I couldn't imagine the Samaritans ever even being able to, explain to me. And then, of course, they referred me to the financial support. and that's been absolutely wonderful. So that is an amazing service, the helpline, the TV film charity. I would encourage obviously anyone to use it if they really need to. But as you were saying, sometimes there is just not the people that you can talk to about your sort of stresses and your worries. But let's just talk a bit about being a parent. Obviously, I don't know what it feels like. I am an uncle now of a beautiful 1-year-old girl. My sister is now really lovely to me. She's my older sister, and I think she's found something else to focus on now. So I get to sort of be the fun-loving uncle. But I can see the amount of work that it takes to raise a child. Is the film and TV industry just not adapted towards parental life?
Um, that's a good question. No, the industry is not inclusive enough. And, as a parent, and also I'm a carer, and I think, there's many people out there who, might be living with a disability or, a mental health condition. Obviously, as a group, CineMamas, we champion flexible work and job sharing. We offer consultancy, we work with productions to sort of create resources. So we do lots of stuff. But I think one of the biggest messages that we really try to put out is, flexible work is not, being lazy. It's not just for parents. It's not, it is for everybody's benefit. It can really support so many accommodations or adjustments that people need in order to be able to do their work properly. And for me, the experience of being a parent, just a parent and an industry worker, just didn't feel like it could go together. Kids get sick. You get a call from a nursery telling you that you need to pick up your child because they've fallen over, or excuse me, you might have a doctor's appointment or a hospital appointment, or maybe just a nativity play that you want to be there for. So it's just sort of part of that culture shift that goes to support, because it all does boil back down to that kind of work-life balance and well-being. Being well in your job doesn't mean that you have to work less. I remember a fantastic example of a job sharing duo that worked in post-production, and it was a mom, so yeah, a parent, but also a guy who played in a band, and he just wanted to be able to have some time to play in the band because there just wasn't enough time in the day. They can be also small things. It doesn't have to be, obviously flexible work and job sharing is the kind of core of it, but it doesn't have to be that alone. It can be just having some boundaries around, for example, communication. So choosing not to, send emails during the weekend. Lots of people catch up on emails on a Saturday morning, excuse me, on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, because that's when they have, that kind of quiet hour or two. But sending those emails, now that we have mobile phones and smartphones, and to somebody who's receiving that, that can create such a huge amount of anxiety, just saying, because even just that one ping will lead you to read that email. And then if there's something actionable that doesn't need to happen until Monday, you'll be thinking about it for the whole of Saturday. And then, oh, I'll just respond to this now. So actually setting just some really healthy boundaries, having proper weekends so you can be present with your kids, but also if you're not a parent, just be present with your friends or in your life. Or so I think as an industry, we've sort of lost track, we've lost sense of what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. Back to that kind of example when I said, I had to rethink everything in terms of what I was doing. For me, it was completely normal that I would have to go to a funeral for 2 hours, fly back and be in the office and deliver because the film is the most important thing. Um, Whereas now I would never do that and never encourage anyone else to do that. But when I was cutting my teeth in the industry, the messaging that I got was always, do everything that you can, impress as much as you can, give up everything for the job, no life, birthdays, weddings, funerals. You just put everything on hold and do everything for that one production. Um, I think that's, we are literally not saving lives. We're not surgeons. We're not doing transplants. We are making a film or a, high-end TV show or whatever. But it's not, a matter of life or death.
Hmm. I mean, it's interesting as I hear you talk. I mean, my experience working on Sunrise, it being just a short film, but we did 5 days in a studio, and then we did 5 days on the island of Alderney, where I grew up in the Channel Islands, and I made every mistake that I can possibly think of right now. And it is, tough when you're in charge to because you care so much about this film, and all I can possibly imagine is, oh, we just need one more day, and so I know that I overworked my crew, and I potentially didn't think about their needs as much as I could have. The one saving grace, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but I always took them out for nice food. That was the one thing, but the mistake I remember learning from was working on a feature film once where we had muffins for breakfast, muffins for lunch, and muffins for dinner. And I just thought, never
Oh
ever would I
dear.
ever put my crew for any of that. So even though, I mean, it is, yes, it's you're not going to war, but sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes there's this kind of like there's this urgency, and the assistant director's shouting at people, and the director's just not giving anyone the time of day. And I mean, I imagine when you get onto bigger sets, does it that get amplified? Does that spirit just sort of get even more out of control in a way? Or does it depend
Well,
on the directors or the sort of producers?
I think I think just to go back to your project for a moment, I think it's important to, distinguish that feeling of being on a short film where everybody's doing it because of the commitment to that project. On a short film, you beg, steal, and borrow, and you have probably the purest of that kind of collaborative spirit where you will do anything just to make it because there is no money. You're doing it because you want to work on that project, or because it's your mate, or because you want the credit, or whatever the reason might be. But it's very, very different to when you're working on a you know multi-million pound or multi-million dollar project. And yes, it is all down to the leadership team and how they decide to set that tone. And I think it's, there are things that you can definitely do on a short film to set that tone and then beg, steal, and borrow. But on sort of when you're looking at kind of big feature films, you're looking at this is, people's careers. This is a job. You are an employer. Therefore, you have a sense of duty of care. You have responsibility. You are accountable. And yes, the problems are always the same. Money, so budget, and schedule, so time and money. They're always the biggest. There's never enough of either. Um, but I think what I learned a lot when I was working at the Film and TV charity, so when I created the toolkit, it was co-designed with the industry, as I said, which meant that, it had to be made with filmmakers. And so I did like hundreds of hours of interviews with people, and as well as working groups and focus groups and town halls and everything in between. But sometimes it was the really simple, basic things that made a difference. And it was interesting to hear. Like, for example, you are about to go into a series of night shoots. You're going to be shooting for 3 weeks. It's going to be, torrential rain for the 3 weeks. it's nighttime, morale is going to be low. And, I quote this individual always because it was so impactful to hear that what he was saying was sometimes it was just about the acknowledgement. We're about to go into 3 weeks of night shoots and it's going to be horrible. Here is, the support that we have available. Just a reminder, here's the film and TV charity phone number or anything at all. As opposed to what we normally do, which is you grit your teeth, and probably you did a lot of that because when you're in charge, you feel like, oh, I feel so guilty, or um, I just want to get through. You put your blinkers on, you just push on through until you get through to the other side. But the acknowledgement piece was what made the biggest difference to this individual and many others. So actually, saying, it's going to be horrible. I really appreciate you. I want to remind you that, uh, the film and TV charity support line is here if you need it, that I'm here if you need to talk to, that it's going to be hard and that I'm going to be really grateful to you. But just taking a sense of responsibility as opposed to just like, oh, let's just pretend it's not happening. So I think with kind of larger productions, there just needs to be more of a strategy in place, which is new. That's why I do the work that I do. I help people think about things like you're filming in an abattoir or a prison or a hospital. Have you thought about the impact that that might have on the people that you're working with? Oh, actually, I've never thought about that. We don't know what people's lived experiences are. We don't know what they've maybe just come through or experienced in their childhood. And so letting people know in advance is really just letting people know that you're trying to create a psychologically safe environment. You don't want to re-traumatize them. And that can be done really easily with a trigger warning. We get them on social media all the time. And these things cost nothing. They literally cost no money. We're working with a really difficult subject matter. We just want to remind you of, the Samaritans phone number or Mind, film and TV charity, or you're dealing with, a scene which involves somebody taking their own life. How can I do this sensitively for everyone involved? Do I need some specialist support for myself? A lot of the time when people are working with lived experience, writers, directors, that can be a very big emotional experience. So just thinking about things in a slightly different way.
Mm. I'm really grateful for this reminder, because it seems like a yaha moment when you hear this, and then you go into the production and you forget it all. And the only way I can possibly imagine, knowing more about it is to hear more about it. And so I think that's why I'm really grateful that you put together the mental health toolkit. I remember shooting a few of the interviews for you and just being blown away by listening to these really experienced producers just talking about those simple little things that as young filmmakers you don't learn. You don't go to film school to learn how to make films, right? You go to film school to meet the people that you make the films with. And
Mm.
so it's really inspiring now because I know now that actually going forward with the marketing of this film Sunrise, it's really important to amplify the work that you're doing at the TV film charity so that we can have a bit more understanding across the industry, because it still does feel like going to war, like and there is a very masculine sort of approach to a lot of these film projects. And I used to think that being a runner you were kind of the lowest person in the production, until I became a behind the scenes videographer, and then I realized you weren't even on a call sheet. And so there it does feel like a hierarchy, and it feels like there's this intense pressure when you get on set to perform and not ask questions. And exactly as you were saying, you just kind of feel like you have to just grit your teeth. And I feel like everyone's in that similar position. Even the directors in the similar position. Everyone's got their own different worries and needs and stuff. Moving on slightly, I want to just talk a little bit about CineMamas, because as an organization, I mean, can people get involved with this? Is this is this open to all parents in the film industry, or is it a particularly a mother's group? How would you describe CineMamas for me?
So it began as a peer support group. So, it was to build a community, but there's lots of different ways to get involved, and we do lots of different things. So for starters, we have a website where we champion a lot of great work, whether it's another group, another industry group. Generally the kind of two themes, it's either being a parent and in the industry, or some sort of positive movement within the industry. So we've done interviews with all sorts of organizations, from Madapaka, authors who have written books, Dope Black Moms, which is an organization that supports Black mothers, really all sorts of different themes, from medical conditions to disabilities, just those who are trying to create a bit more of a ripple effect within the industry. So that's kind of what our website does. We have an Instagram page and a Facebook group. The Facebook group is where we post a lot of jobs. So it's really just used as a place where often people share jobs with myself or Aline, who is my Aline Harjani, who is my CineMamas partner and co-founder. So the Facebook group operates more as a jobs board. Instagram is where we sort of shout about, anything that we're doing. We run events, but most recently we started offering some services. So we've created some resources for some production companies. We do a lot of public speaking. So I sit on a lot of panels, generally speaking about parenting within the industry. So we do a whole series of things. We deliver training, so we do a lot around flexible work. We also look at return to work, as well as working with other partners in that space. So again, looking at talent retention and how we can support that. It is open to all parents. So during the pandemic, we ran many, 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 many online events, like a lot of other groups. We were recipients of a community support grant from the Film and TV charity. As I said, we were also beneficiaries. And we were nominated for an award. But the only reason why I mention all of these things is because on one of our many sessions that we did online, which covered everything from confidence to imposter syndrome, mental health, of course, that's sort of where it all began, where we were sort of talking about it a lot more openly. We had people who weren't parents on it, who were thinking about wanting to be parents, because some of the issues are similar, I'm thinking about becoming a parent. How will I coexist? How will I pick my kids up? Or, so hearing from, I guess, other experienced people. And that was a real kind of, inspirational moment for me, because I thought, gosh, if there is a space to be able to have those conversations, that's amazing. So we do lots and lots of things. We work internationally. Obviously, I'm Italian, but my CineMamas partner is Spanish. So we do a lot of translated training. We do unconscious bias. So we do all sorts of stuff. We've become a little bit of an evolution over years. We're now 4 years since we launched, and we've been on a bit of a journey, and we just continue to try and push for change, for positive change within the industry.
It's incredible to hear, and I'm very proud of you for it. And I've also had similar conversations with other people who have worked in the industry, that when they do become a parent, or they want to establish more of a stable life, they find other people that want to do the same thing, and they're still in the industry, but they're deciding their own terms. Do you feel, I mean, I've always wondered about the film industry, because it's almost 20 different industries under one big umbrella. It takes locations, it takes set designers, it takes actors, it takes all these different industries to come together. And the changes that we've seen in the industry because of the technology, and obviously with the distributors like Netflix and Amazon and Disney, it's almost comparable to how Uber just came in and completely monopolized the taxi industry. However, the taxi industry was made up of basically just taxi drivers and their clients, and Uber disrupted that market and have created quite unfavorable terms now for taxi drivers. And yet I find that there's almost a delay in the film and TV world because we don't really understand the knock-on effects of what having these tech overlords, as I call them, what having those distributors do for, the trickle-down effect. The studios no longer have as many different territories to sell to. They don't have back end of royalties and DVDs and stuff. And we've just got this highly competitive market now where if you're the top 1%, of the production companies or the studios, yes, you might have relationships with Netflix, but you're still losing the sort of favor of these distributors, because distributors now have complete global access to all productions, all talent. And I wonder whether or not, as an industry, the TV film industry has enough representation or power to even negotiate with people. I mean, I know that Beck 2 is a union for production people, and then I know that obviously with the recent strikes with the artists and the writers, they've all got their own unions. I mean, is the film industry, is it a big mess?
Well, I think because you've raised lots of different points. I mean, and I can't speak on behalf of any of these studios, obviously, but what I would say is some of the studios that you mentioned actually do inclusion incredibly well. Warner's, Netflix, they are really at the forefront of supporting a lot of these initiatives. The real problems come with the independent sector because it's the wild west of indies, and it's not the indies' fault, of course. It's because maybe their budgets are being squeezed. But I think from a well-being inclusion point of view, it just needs to be a two-pronged approach from the top down and from the bottom up, and everything in between. I think with the news of the new tax credit increase that came about a month ago, we're headed for a lot of business. And the problem that we had before was, now there is, the unscripted world, there is a huge amount of people out of work. The same is happening with scripted as well. Lots of projects haven't picked up yet. But there is potential. We were facing as I mentioned earlier, a problem with just not having enough trained people moving into positions way too quickly, kind of moving up in role. And so the sort of impact that can have on people's mental health as well, not feeling properly supported, or you're not fully experienced. And the knock-on effect of that, when you were describing earlier, the kind of direct people shouting on set, often the core causes of these things could be, lack of confidence or insecurity or worry, or you drank too much coffee, or you had something going on at home, or the pressure feels like it's too much. And the easiest way, attack is the best form of defense, they say. So I think we, I don't want to sound like, like a unbelievably optimistic, rose-tinted glasses kind of person, but I think there has been a huge shift within the industry, certainly from my experience of working, on sets or being part of production teams. We weren't having these conversations before. We have a long way to go, but there has been a big shift. And, I don't work there anymore, but I think a lot of it is also, down to the Film and TV Charity and other organizations like the BFI and Beck2 and BAFTA, and now the Creative Industries Independent Standards Authority. So there's a lot of movement in a positive direction to create accountability, to give people a sense of, something happened on this production and I raised concerns and something was done. But I think it's also worth stressing that I think the studio worlds, which is they're often seen as, potentially the source of the problems, they actually deal with situations like this really well. They have a lot of support systems in place, and they do a lot to support that career growth or pastoral care. So yeah, I think that's really important to stress.
I think I also sometimes forget because as an aspiring director, You know, I'm only just sort of, you know, 1% of an industry that is made up of lots and lots of different job roles. And obviously, yes, I might have different problems to camera operators, or, you know, makeup artists, or, you know, and so I guess in that respect, it's like, yeah, I don't have all of the information because I only know what I can see, which is I need money, lack of money, you know, give me money, give me money. Where of course, you know, I think the well-being side of it probably is much better handled by the people with much more experience and, you know, obviously the money to make things happen. So that's really good. Thank you. I've got a bit more optimism now about the sort of studio model, and I hope one day to be able to obviously make things for these big platforms like Netflix and Amazon. Okay, so just lastly then, if you don't mind, because obviously the TV film charity has been just a wonderful resource for many, many people. I am hoping that Sunrise, this short film, can not just raise awareness, but also raise money for charities like the TV film charity. Have you got any advice for me, as a filmmaker trying to get as many people to watch this film and have these conversations?
I think keep doing what you do, which is connecting with people, you know. I mean, you're an incredibly, you know, solar and positive individual. And I think that that's something that people take away with them. You know, we met a couple of times, but it was impactful for me. And you definitely left a long lasting memory in that sense. And I think, you know, and this is for everyone, sort of back to where we started at this at the beginning of the interview, is, you know, the importance of giving people time. The best piece of advice that anyone gave me, and it's, you know, kind of cheesy, but it's so important, is remember those on their way up because they'll remember you on your way down. Um, because it's all about that kind of karma and giving people time, and you just don't know where paths might cross. You know, I have been in the industry almost 20 years, and, you know, after a while, you do keep reconnecting with individuals just because it's, you know, you might be the same age group, you worked on films together, you worked on projects. And of course, you know, there's negative experiences along the way, but I think it's just continue just, you know, bringing out that message, bringing awareness to these really important topics. I think it's really fundamental that, you know, you keep doing that. Um, and I think just be really proud of what you're doing, you know, have confidence in what you do because it's great.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you just said. And, you know, it's meeting people like yourself that just keeps me you know, keeps me energized, keeps me trying to raise the bar and yeah, hopefully be able to make an impact with this film. So Valeria, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else that you want? Maybe you could tell us where we can find out more about yourself, about CineMamas.
Yeah, of course. I just want one last piece of advice is respond to emails. Don't forget to respond to emails. You know, that's a really important thing. So with regards to contacting CineMamas, so we're www.cinemamas.co.uk. On Instagram, we're CineMamas Co. And the same for Facebook, we're CineMamas as a group. So if anyone wants to write a piece, do a piece, hopefully we'll do one on Sunrise as well, if you're up for it.
100%.
Give you a bit more view with our community. Just get in touch. We're always happy to get involved.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.